Hey, my name's Don Hanshew, and I've been on the board of ministry for a number of years, and I want to say thank you for being on the board. Your service means a lot, and it really not only helps us as a conference, it helps those who are in the church who experience these clergy colleagues of ours in a really good way when we give them helpful and meaningful feedback. And I'm going to introduce you really quickly to this adopted interview schedule for this October 2021. I want you to understand it, and you'll be able to ask me questions and connect with me on this in other ways, but I want you to kind of get a view of all of this. So on the day of, this is October the 25th, when we have the interviews, we'll all arrive at 8:30. That's the candidates and all the board of ministry folks doing interviews will arrive at 8:30 to a large Zoom room, and that's where we'll all be together. Then when we get there, you'll have the candidates will be in the room, which are their almonds, and then all the board of ministry folks will be these pinto beans. These candidate partners are the division of elders folks who are also board of ministry interview team. And then we have 4 people who will be the tech folks that will be needed throughout the day. So we all arrive at 8:30. We show up in that room. Once we're in that room, we will have our welcome, order of the day, and what we do if we run into tech issues during the day. And we'll have a worship and devotional by Mickey, our board of ministry chair. By 8:45, we break up and people will hang up off of this Zoom and go to one of the pre-assigned Zoom room A, B, or C. And let me show you what that'll look like. Is that there'll be 3 candidates that will go to room C, for example. There'll be 3 candidate partners, which are teamed up individually with those that'll go to this Zoom room, as well as 3 people for each one of the interview teams, the preaching, disciples, making project, teaching the theology and doctrine, the scenarios. So the group of folks there is a total of 16 folks, including the tech person that'll be in that room. I'm going to go ahead and put those across the board. So now you see how they're distributed. We leave a tech person in the large Zoom room, and we have a little bit of board of ministry folks, assuming some absences and so forth. We're not at max capacity. But you'll see in each room, you have a tech person, you have candidates, which are the almonds, and then you have the candidate partners, which are the black beans, along with the interview teams as well. And this is how the day will unfold. We'll start at 8:45 as they've moved to this room, and in that room, everybody outside of the candidates will introduce themselves by name, the church they serve, or their role in the conference, and just a simple fun fact about themselves, not less than 60 seconds. And that leaves each of the candidates about 5 minutes to share about their call story, why they feel passionate about going into ministry. And then each one of these groups will be doing this at the same time. Then at 9:15, they will be distributed to the different areas. For example, the candidates will just go alphabetically to one of these different rooms per the tech person. They'll also have their candidate partner that will go with them. And then each set of 3 of the interview team will also go to each one of those groups. Let me go ahead and push that across the board so you can see. Here we go. Everybody by 9:15 would be distributed to each one of these rooms. So, for example, Zoom room C has its large Zoom room C, but then has 3 breakout rooms. Each one of these breakout rooms would have a candidate partner, and then 3 board of ministry folks who are doing the interviews. For example, in this square that I'm touching now, they'll have ideally 45 minutes, no more than an hour, and they will talk with the candidate. All 4, including the candidate partner, will be interviewing the candidate around preaching, teaching, and making disciples project. At the end of that time, say they finish in 45 minutes, then the candidate goes back to that large Zoom room. Then these folks will remain together and go ahead and use a white rubric sheet, the same sheet we used last time, that helps folks kind of get graded on their responses to the material. And the candidate partner is the one that's responsible for getting all that information and everybody being in agreement with what goes on that white sheet after that interview. They're the one who's responsible for that. And then the same thing is happening in each one of these groups. But say one group gets done in 30 minutes, one group gets done in an hour, they all go back to that room. And then When they come back, they'll rotate to a different room. This one, say, was in this room, it'll go here, and that candidate partner will go with them. Let's say this candidate was in the scenarios, they might come back to the preaching, teaching, making disciples project, and so forth. And their candidate partner would always go with them. So you see how they would rotate through the day. Notice that over here, we only have 2 candidates, the way our system is set up. That just means there's a floating block of an hour that this group would just share in. So, like it could be this group would get the hour block that would be free and vice versa as it goes through there. We would continue the same process at 9:15, at 10:15, and then 11:15. And at 12:15, all the interviews would be completed. And at that time, something else would change. That means when all the interviews are completed, the candidates would sign off of this Zoom room. For example, all these candidates would sign off, and then they go back to the large Zoom room. Let me show you what that would look like. So all the candidates go back to that large Zoom room, and then the tech person would create a breakout room for the interviews to happen. They would come in here. There would be 2 board of ministry folks that would be in that room, plus the tech person. They do their exit interview, and then they're finished for the day. That just repeats that process until everyone has finished. It allows them to kind of hang out a little bit in that Zoom room, talk a little bit, whatever they want to do, and then they exit and continue to go that way. So what happens over here is different. What would happen is this tech person, once they finish, they'll take all these folks and they'll collapse them into one Zoom room. This is the team meeting, the closing team meeting. Now, the candidate partners are the ones responsible for making sure each candidate is thoroughly vetted, and they get input from all 3 of these groups about that candidate. Now, interesting enough is that the candidate partner is the only one that's read all of the material for their singular candidate. And these other folks have been asked to specifically, for example, read the scenarios, call and disciple life, and references. That's their focus. Now, they're welcome to read all the material that candidate presents, but that's the information of which they need to be the expert. Now, when in this last team meeting, they're going to take the white rubric sheets, double check, make sure that's what everybody's in agreement on, and then they're also going to transfer that to a green rubric sheet, which is green, good to go, finished, done. And then once they have finished that, they have until 2:15 when the Board of Ministry Division of Elders group meets. And ideally, that gives them plenty of time to get to take lunch, take a break, and all that. But once they're finished, these Board of Ministry folks get to leave and go about their business for the rest of the day. Ideally, they're done by 1 o'clock. These Division of Elder folks, who are the candidate partners, they will wait in this room until this room gets cleared, and then they'll end up there ultimately for the last meeting of the Division of Elders. Let me show you what that looks like. Each group will collapse, make their decisions, and once their decisions are made, our black beans here, our Division of Elders, Board of Ministry folks, they make sure all that information is right. Everybody else leaves from the Board of Ministry. They remain. All these folks have exited, done their exit interviews. They have left. And once they're left and get cleared, all of these folks go back into this room with any other the Division of Elders folks, and then make the final decision. And because of the thoroughness of this process, we anticipate to be able to be done by about 4:30. Now, there's a couple other things that will need to happen prior to this to make sure that it works really well. And let me reset the board so you can understand it and see it a little differently. Okay, so it's more easy to see this in a visual way. But what will happen is that early in October 4th is the projected date, I will get together with all of the Board of Ministry elders who are candidate partners. And we will pray for each one of the candidates that we've been assigned. We'll pray for them, look over all of the material, because the Board of Ministry elder Division of Elders person is the only person that's really required to read all of the material. We'll make sure that it's complete. There's nothing missing. If there's any flags that we see right off, we'll go ahead and make a note of that. But we will meet and talk about the candidates for about 90 minutes. That should give us ample time to cover the candidates with big, wide brush strokes. Now, in the first week of October, everyone who's reading material for the Preaching, Teaching, Making Disciples project will have a Zoom meeting of 90 minutes. And they will all get together and talk about all of the candidates that have submitted that material. And they will notice any flags. Anybody who's new to that Board of Ministry process gets to learn from some other people about what to expect, how that comes together. And they will have met for about 90 minutes and just cover that material. And in the same way that happens with the theology and doctrine, the scenarios, call, and discipline life and references. Each one of those will meet the first week as a group on a horizontal plane. And then in the third week of October, all of the folks on the vertical plane will meet together, and they will talk about the fullness of the candidate, what to expect, what to anticipate, and so forth for about 90 minutes. Now, the candidate partners are welcome to attend any of these meetings, but not required to, because they have some other responsibilities on the day of. We're trying to distribute evenly the amount of time that each person has to be involved. So once they finish this vertical meeting, they're done, and then they don't have to do anything again until the day of the interviews on the 25th. I will have a day on October 21st for about 90 minutes, kind of an open office hours time on a Zoom meeting. If anybody has any questions about the process or about a candidate or whatever, they're welcome to jump in on that, ask their questions, and get back out, no problem. I'll just be available for that time on October 21st. So this is how the process would work. There's a couple things we're trying to solve with this process. One is we want to increase the number of people who meet and interview a candidate so that we have more meaningful consensus and decision making around what's the next step for that candidate. We're also going to the candidates will experience a lot more hospitality across this. They'll have somebody that they'll feel like is with them, understands them. There's more opportunities for them to talk among themselves. And then lastly, it helps us as Board of Ministry members have a better understanding about the candidate, because it's not just 3 people as it traditionally would be interviewed. It's actually 10 people that interviews them. And this group, in 2 different ways, has an opportunity to talk about that candidate. It requires folks to be more prepared for the day of interviews. But the key is that our Board of Ministry Division of Elders folks, they're going to help drive the process to the final decision. So they're really important, and their position is slightly elevated in this process. So that's a real quick overview. Look forward to talking to you more about it. Let me know if you got any questions. But thank you again for being part of the Board of Ministry here in Holston Conference.